Today marks the beginning of a new chapter where we extend our support to Emily and Sharon. This announcement was made by my husband, Matthew, with a note of triumph in his voice during a phone conversation. I found myself speechless, caught off guard by Matthew's sudden pronouncement. It was as if Matthew's world revolved solely around Emily and Sharon, leaving me feeling overlooked and questioning the value of our marriage. In response, I mustered a cheerful tone to inform him that their packages had arrived and mentioned my recent move to a new place, a statement that left Matthew momentarily speechless. I am Elizabeth, a 45-year-old sales professional working for a leading firm. Despite the challenges and demands from clients, I find my job fulfilling and have built long-standing relationships with many of them. My life outside work is quiet, often spending weekends at home, with Matthew being my closest family. My parents have passed away, and while my in-laws live nearby, our interactions are minimal and infrequent. Matthew enjoys dining out, frequently inviting his sister Emily and her daughter Sharon to join him. Initially, this preference for spending time with them over me stirred discontent on my part. But over time, I've come to understand Matthew's deep-seated reasons for his actions. Emily and Sharon's life hasn't been easy, living in a cramped, dilapidated apartment following the failure of my father-in-law's business. Matthew's gratitude towards Emily stems from her financial support during his education, which enabled him to complete college despite the hardships. Upon learning the full extent of their situation and Matthew's indebtedness to Emily, my perspective shifted. I chose to embrace understanding and ceased my complaints, recognizing Matthew's desire to give back to his sister and niece. Though it sometimes leaves me feeling lonely, I've accepted this as part of our life together. Matthew's loyalty to his family was further highlighted when he shared the news of Emily's impending divorce and her decision to maintain custody of Sharon. Emily has always been a challenging figure for me, especially after a rather harsh first meeting where she openly criticized my appearance and style. Despite these complexities, the recent developments have prompted a reflection on our family dynamics and my role within them. As Matthew continues to prioritize his sister and niece, I've decided to support him in this endeavor, hoping that, moving forward, we can continue to support each other and uphold the value of family unity amidst our challenges. Matthew and his family chose to ignore Emily's discourteous behavior towards me, leaving me no choice but to endure it silently. Matthew then informed me of his intention to frequently visit his parents, emphasizing Emily's fragility compared to my resilience, and expressing concern for Sharon. Despite the slight directed at me, I refrained from arguing, realizing that a disagreement would only lead to Matthew spending even more time away from home. With a heavy heart, I could only bid him farewell. Consequently, Matthew's presence at home became increasingly rare, often not returning until after midnight during the weekdays, and his weekends were spent entirely away, deepening my sense of isolation. Upon returning home from work to an empty, dark house, the silence confirmed Matthew's absence yet again, exacerbating my loneliness. On the rare occasions Matthew was home, his behavior became increasingly bothersome. One day, he shockingly demanded that I purchase a designer bag as a housewarming gift for Emily, justifying it by pointing out my upcoming bonus. I questioned the necessity of such a gift, suggesting he should be the one to do it. This suggestion angered Matthew, who insisted that since I had married into the family, it was my duty to extend such courtesies to Emily. Matthew's lecture on family manners lasted an hour, ending with a stern reminder to ensure Emily and Sharon received a gift. After he left, presumably for his parents' house, I quietly lamented the lack of reciprocation from Emily's side over the years. Emily's call a few days later only added fuel to the fire. She expected a housewarming gift as if it were a given, despite never having extended such courtesies to us. I couldn't hold back my frustration and reminded her of her absence of generosity, even highlighting the lack of a wedding gift from her side. Emily's response was dismissive, rationalizing her behavior by stating that family members need not exchange gifts. She even boasted about purchasing an envelope for us, despite it being empty, and dared to complain about the quality of our wedding favors. Reflecting on Emily's entitlement and lack of consideration left me speechless. Her brazen attitude at our wedding, coupled with her complaints about the lack of more expensive gifts, was infuriating. Emily's final remark underscored her perception of me as the least important member of their family hierarchy, expecting me to cater to her demands without question. This interaction starkly highlighted the imbalance in our family dynamics, leaving me to grapple with the expectations placed upon me simply because of my marital connection. I was completely taken aback by Emily's audacity. Before I could even process her words, Sharon chimed in, demanding I also purchase a bag for her, specifically from a Fifth Avenue exclusive store, before hanging up with a dismissive laugh. Their expectations left me bewildered and frustrated. Why was I the one burdened with these unreasonable demands? As I sighed heavily, I realized the situation at home was deteriorating further. Matthew's visits became even rarer, and on the few occasions he did return, he began to take money from my wallet despite my protests. He justified his actions by claiming that since I was mostly at home, I wouldn't need the money, asserting that he would use it for something worthwhile. His disregard for my feelings and finances was draining me. The situation escalated one day when a mover unexpectedly arrived at our doorstep, claiming to be there to move items for Matthew. Confused and anxious, I tried to explain that there must have been some mistake, but the mover insisted they had instructions directly from Matthew. Overwhelmed by the sudden influx of boxes, I called Matthew, only to overhear Emily and Sharon's laughter in the background. Matthew's response was shocking. He announced that the belongings for Emily and Sharon had arrived because, from that day forward, we were going to support them. He dismissed my opinion outright, with Emily eagerly welcoming me into this new arrangement, suggesting that I should be happy to take care of Sharon since we had no children of our own. Sharon's response was equally jarring, expressing embarrassment at the prospect of being associated with me. Stunned by Matthew's unilateral decision and the lack of consideration for my feelings, I began to question the viability of our marriage. Matthew's next statement only added to my resolve. He mentioned that more items and new furniture for Emily and Sharon were on their way, and that we would need to organize everything before their arrival. They would stay at their parents' until then, leaving me alone to manage the chaos. Emily's laughter at the thought of me dealing with this situation alone was the final straw. The lack of respect and empathy from Matthew and his family was clear. I was left to ponder the future of a marriage where I was an afterthought, forced to accommodate and support individuals who showed no gratitude or consideration for my well-being. Sharon's bold demand for careful handling of her precious belongings pushed me to my limit, and I was itching to end the conversation. With a curt, "All right," I quickly hung up, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. No sooner had I put down the phone than I sprang into action, ready to change my situation. 2 weeks later, Matthew called, eagerly inquiring about the additional baggage and whether I had organized everything. His voice carried a hint of anxiousness, probably curious about the state of our home. With a forced sweetness, I informed him, "Yes, everything arrived and I've moved into a new place," delivering the news with a deliberately cheerful tone. Matthew's confusion was palpable, his stunned silence speaking volumes. Indeed, on the day Emily and Sharon's possessions arrived, I didn't waste a moment. I rushed to a local real estate agency, insisting on finding immediate accommodation. Despite initial hesitations due to typical move-in procedures and renovations, persistence paid off. I was introduced to a women-only shared residence, featuring secure entry, shared amenities, and included utilities, making it immediately habitable. Cleaning service and furnished rooms made it even more appealing. Upon viewing the last available room, I decided on the spot. It was perfect. Matthew's reaction over the phone was one of shock and disbelief. He couldn't grasp the idea of me moving out, insisting that as a married couple, my actions were absurd and demanding an immediate apology and return. Emily and Sharon's panic and anger in the background only added to the chaos. Matthew, attempting to assert control, threatened me with the consequences of a divorce, insinuating that I would struggle to find someone else due to my age and appearance. Their cruel taunts were meant to demean me, but they only solidified my resolve. In a twist, I confronted Matthew with knowledge of his affair, catching him completely off guard. His flustered response confirmed my suspicions, and it was clear he had underestimated me. Despite his betrayal and their collective disrespect, I stood my ground, reminding them of the strength and independence they had overlooked. My decision to move out wasn't just about escaping their toxicity. It was about reclaiming my dignity and starting anew, free from the constraints of their selfish demands and unkind judgments. I informed Matthew that I had enlisted the services of a private investigator, given his frequent absences, suspecting he might be involved in an affair. My intuition proved correct, as the investigation concluded swiftly within 5 days, revealing Matthew's daily rendezvous with his mistress after work. The times he claimed to be dining out with Emily and Sharon were merely a cover for his days off. The investigator had managed to capture numerous photos of Matthew and his mistress, showcasing their intimacy. I couldn't help but reveal this with a mix of amusement and disbelief. The evidence collected painted a clear picture of Matthew's deceit, where the funds he had been extracting from my wallet were likely funding his escapades. With photographic proof in hand, I resolved to divorce Matthew, intending to seek alimony from him and possibly from his mistress as well. I confidently informed Matthew of my plans, including the dispatch of a certified letter to both him and his mistress at their workplace, ensuring their affair would become public knowledge. Upon visiting a law firm with the evidence, even the attorney seemed surprised by the compelling case against Matthew. Matthew's reaction to the impending exposure was one of fury and disbelief, especially with the prospect of their office colleagues learning of the affair through the certified letters. Emily's anxious inquiry into Matthew's well-being hinted at her underlying motives, having expected to live comfortably off our efforts while she maintained a leisurely lifestyle. Matthew's silence in response to Emily and Sharon's concerns underscored his dilemma, having not only betrayed me, but also jeopardized his financial stability and relationships. I pointed out to Matthew the likelihood of his financial ruin, as indicated by the investigator's report on his lavish spending on his mistress, including expensive gifts that suggested potential debt. Emily and Sharon's outcry over this revelation was loud and accusatory, berating Matthew for his actions and expressing their disdain for his choices. Despite Matthew's plea for help in managing the fallout with Emily and Sharon, I stood firm in my decision to proceed with the divorce and demand appropriate alimony. I made it clear that Matthew needed to confront the consequences of his actions on his own, emphasizing the urgency of addressing the situation before the certified letter made the affair public at his workplace. Matthew's frustration was evident, but I remained detached, focusing on securing a fair settlement and moving forward from the betrayal and deceit that had overshadowed our marriage. After ending the call with Matthew, I chose to ignore his subsequent attempts to reach out, setting my phone to block any further calls from him. In my mind, Matthew and Emily were now on their own to navigate their challenges. My decision to divorce Matthew became definitive, especially after his initial reluctance to proceed due to the lifestyle we had maintained on our dual income. Matthew's realization that sustaining the same standard of living on his single income was unfeasible seemed to be a driving factor in his resistance to the divorce. However, armed with undeniable proof of his infidelity, I firmly communicated my refusal to consider reconciliation and threaten legal action if he continued to oppose the divorce. Ultimately, Matthew acquiesced, signing the divorce papers with a heavy heart. I pursued alimony from Matthew and sought compensation for emotional distress from his mistress. The settlement amounts were reasonably determined with guidance from my lawyer, ensuring fairness. Surprisingly, Matthew's mistress promptly paid her portion, having borrowed the funds from her parents after revealing the situation to them. Matthew, on the other hand, found the financial burden challenging and repeatedly requested a reduction, which I firmly declined during our lawyers' meeting. I even suggested adding the money he had taken from my wallet to the settlement, which visibly shook him. In the end, Matthew, shaking, consented to the settlement as it was. Following the fallout, both Matthew and his partner resigned from their company as their affair became public knowledge, likely spurred by the delivery of the certified documents related to our divorce. The origins of the envelopes alone were enough to spark office gossip, leading to an uncomfortable environment for Matthew, who eventually chose to leave his job. Now, Matthew struggles to find stable employment due to his age, and is left to manage his living expenses, alimony payments, ongoing mortgage obligations, and the debts incurred from his affair through temporary day labor. Occasionally, messages from Matthew reach me, through our lawyer, filled with regret and pleas for reconciliation. He admits his wrongdoing and expresses how difficult life has become, wishing he had foreseen the consequences of his actions. Despite these messages, my path forward remains unchanged, focused on rebuilding and moving on from a chapter that, while painful, has ultimately led to newfound independence and strength. Matthew, overwhelmed with regret, broke down in tears in front of the lawyer, lamenting how he should have treated me better. His realization came too late, and now he found himself in a dire situation, a predicament shared by Emily and Sharon, who were living with him. Despite Matthew's financial ruin, I had moved on, blocking his number to sever ties. Unexpectedly, a call from Emily slipped through, her number unblocked, prompting me to hesitantly answer. Emily's plea for help was immediate. She and Sharon were struggling alongside Matthew, facing the imminent cutoff of their utilities and a lack of food. Her voice was weary, the desperation clear. Yet, my decision was firm. I had no obligation to rescue them from their self-inflicted hardships. I suggested Emily find employment, reminding her of her ability to work. Sharon's interjection, labeling me harshly for not offering support despite my financial stability, was audacious. She even demanded that I take them in, a notion I found absurd. I clarified with finality that my divorce from Matthew made them strangers to me, and I wanted no further contact. Sharon's response was a mix of anger and entitlement, but I remained resolute, ending the call and promptly blocking Emily's number, determined to permanently disconnect from their chaos. Their subsequent struggles, while unfortunate, were consequences of their own choices. I had embarked on a new chapter, moving out of the shared housing, not out of necessity, but to welcome a new companion into my life, a dog I met at an adoption event. This dog, unlike the others, seemed to choose me, its gaze locking onto mine in a moment filled with destiny. After multiple visits and a growing bond, I adopted the dog, necessitating a move to a pet-friendly apartment. Dogs offer loyalty and joy that human relationships sometimes fail to provide. My new home is filled with the unconditional love of my dog, who eagerly responds to my call. Despite the challenges life may throw at us, I am no longer facing them alone. Together with my dog, I look forward to a future of mutual support and forward momentum, leaving the past and its turmoil behind.